Hello again. Today I want to talk about how to train for a bikepacking event. So something like the Transcontinental Race, the Transatlantic Way Race, the Tour Divide, Arizona 750, that type of thing, rather than to go on a bikepacking trip. So the idea being to go as fast as possible over a approximately set course or between set control points over several days. So a bit of background, Lee Craigie, who you may have heard of, she's quite a well-known bikepacking racer, and I organised a training camp in Girona for the Adventure Syndicate in 2017, and on that camp I met Jenny Graham, Paola Regner and Karen Tosti, three endurance cyclists. Paola and Jenny both had quite a lot of experience in bikepacking and Karen didn't have any. And I offered to coach them, so I worked with them to do the Transcontinental Race that Paola and Karen did, and Jenny ultimately broke the round the world record. Over the last few years I've learned a lot about how to train and prepare for a bikepacking event, and of course I've coached several other athletes preparing for bikepacking events and continue to do so. So of course the first thing to do is what's your goal event, what's the adventure that you've got in mind, how well would you like to do, how long do you expect it to take you, or how long would you like it to take you, and once you know that, then you can start working towards it. Hopefully you've left yourself enough time to prepare, and usually it takes several months to prepare for a bikepacking event, unless you've got a very strong background in cycling and you've done some before, or even if it's a short one, then you can probably do that off the back of a good general basis of fitness. So the next steps to work out a rough riding routine. It's better to ride to durations and have a daily routine that's based on time than it is to try and work to a certain distance, because things can go wrong. You might have mechanical problems, or you might get lost, or something which could cause you not to be able to complete what your planned distance is each day. But if you work to a time plan, if you have a mechanical problem, you can fix that and you can still get back onto your time plan, and all that means is that you've lost some riding time. And if you're clever about the logistics, if you've got an enforced stop, then you make the most of it. Make sure you do some resupply and get a good meal, and maybe even check into a bed and breakfast so that you get a good night's sleep. So a good way to split your days is how much time you're going to spend riding and how much time you're going to spend recovering and sleeping. And it's probably best to start by working out how much time you need to recover and sleep. If you're doing a long event like the Transcontinental, then it's got to be very sustainable. Whereas if you're doing quite a short event that might be just 2 or 3 days, then you probably don't need very much sleep at all. So let's say if you wanted to work with, say, 16 hours of riding time and 8 hours of recovery time, you might want to sleep for 5 hours of that, eat for an hour, and then have an hour either side for faffing about or whatever. And so then you know that you've got, you know what you're training for. You know you're training to ride for 16 hours a day with stops for resupply and coffee stops and maybe for a lunch stop. And you've got your 8 hours recovery time that you've got to use to maximise your nutrition, your hydration, get some sleep and recover as best you can. So how can you ride for 16 hours in one day? Well, you can probably spend 16 hours riding, but you might not ride as far as you would hope to when you actually get to your goal event. So what you're now training to do is to maximise the distance you can ride in 16 hours and then recover in 8 hours and then do it again the next day, recover in 8 hours and do it again. So what you're trying to do is train yourself to be able to ride or use that 16 hours a day to ride the greatest distance possible and then be able to do it again and again. So it's basically 16 hours a day without getting a lot more tired. So one point to bear in mind is don't get too hung up on equipment, because it's your mind and body that's going to get you through the event. Sticking with it, not giving up, and developing the fitness and resilience to ride day in, day out, and deal with a certain amount of discomfort. The next step is to look at the period of time you've got between now and your event. So that might be 5 months. It's now February, so if you had an event in July, you've got March, April, May, June, July, so you've got 5 months of training time. So over that 5 months time, identify certain weekends or trips that you can do, or maybe even events like an ODAX or a short bikepacking race, or just something that you've planned as a test event for yourself to make stepping stones along the way to your event. And these weekends, you need to space the weekends out so that you can recover, because it takes quite a long time to recover from long rides. You obviously can't ride the transcontinental race or even the transatlantic way race durations in training. You have to train yourself and prepare yourself as best you can, and when the event comes, you do the event. But it's good to do 2 or 3 days back to back, and at least a couple of times before the event, make sure all your systems and your camping systems and your packing, your bags and everything work well, and your hydration and nutrition strategies work well. So once you've got a plan and a progression of events, what you're trying to do then is train yourself to be able to ride faster for your 16 hours. And consistency is the key to getting fit. So what I find best is to have a weekly routine. So set up a weekly routine that works for you. Working with a weekly routine means it's much easier to plan progressive training, and also plan, if you have, for instance, a good strategy is to have either 2 weeks harder training and 1 week easy, or 3 weeks harder training and 1 week easy. So for instance, if you had a planned event, you might want to spend the subsequent week, the week after the event, as a recovery week. And most people who work Monday to Friday have a bit more time at the weekends and a bit less time during the week. And obviously, if you're going to be training to ride for 16 hours a day or 12 hours a day or whatever, you need to do some long rides. You need to ride for like 10 to 12 hours. And a good way to create a block of training to practice all your systems is to use Friday night. So you can then have Friday night, Saturday long ride, Sunday long ride, and then you've got a 3-day block, and that's plenty to get you into a system and learn what works and what doesn't work. And remember that what you're training to do is to be able to ride for this period of time without getting a lot more tired. So if you can do 3 days, then you're going to be able to do 10 days with the right mental attitude, because it'll weigh you down because you're having less and less sleep, but at least the pace that you're riding at, that works for you. If you're going to get faster, you need to actually train faster. So within the week, when you've got a bit less time, the idea would be to include 1 or 2 interval sessions where you're actually working yourself really hard. Maybe doing some hill sessions if you've got some long hills around where you live and the course is going to be hilly. Using a turbo trainer or a watt bike can be very effective. And the advantage of using things like a watt bike is you can measure power, and using power as a basis for progression is really effective because you can measure your improvement. A week that might work really well would be if you're doing your long endurance block at the weekend. You want to have a rest on Monday because you have to recover before you can train hard again. On Tuesday, it's probably a good idea to not do too much hard work again, because it takes time to recover from these long rides and long weekends. So maybe some yoga or Pilates or some strength work, because in a long endurance event, particularly an off-road one, your upper body is getting fatigued, and riding the bike doesn't train your upper body, so doing some sort of gym work or upper body strengthening can be really effective and useful, and stop the fatigue related injuries like the back of the neck getting sore, and even sore arms and whatever else, and sore back is much better if you can strengthen your upper body and your core. So on Wednesday you'd be recovered enough to do a hard interval session, and to me that would be the hardest session of the week, the most high intensity session of the week, and in that you should be getting your heart rate above 90% of the maximum. So a really good session is something like 4 by 8 minutes with 2 minutes recovery, and you just do that as hard as you can. And if you just do that every week, and using this 2 weeks on 1 week off cycle, so you do it for 2 weeks, have an easier week where you maybe do 10 by a minute with a minute recovery or something like that, or do 3 weeks of hard and 1 week recovery, depending on what suits you. You have to work out what suits you and how quickly can you recover. And the important factor is to make sure you do recover before you train hard again. Otherwise you just get more and more tired and you won't get any fitter. You want to get fit, you don't want to get tired. And also you want to enjoy your cycling. So after that I would do an endurance type ride on Thursday, which can be a couple of hours, whatever you've got time for really. And if you can cycle to work and back, then that's great, that's perfect. And you can do an added loop on your way home or an added loop on your way to work. And then you're into Friday, Saturday and Sunday, which is your endurance block. So in building your endurance, first of all start focusing on one day. So get your one day. You aim to do one big day at the weekend. Don't aim to do 2 big days at the weekend and build that way. It's much better to do one day where you build up to maybe 10 hours or 12 hours of riding, and then just get out the next day, maybe do an hour or a couple of hours, and then you're training your body to get out the following day. But you're making the training progressive. Once you can comfortably do 10 to 12 hours on a Saturday, then you can start to build up the Sunday ride so that you're actually doing back-to-back days. But initially just focus on the one day. And don't worry about intensity. You don't have to do it hard, you just have to do the duration. So if you're using a heart rate monitor and you've got your training zone set, then your training should be in your endurance zone. So don't push it too hard. If you feel good, then push it a little bit harder on the hills, but don't go above your training zone 3, because it doesn't really help you much. Once you've progressed in your training a little bit, then you could start to make your Friday night session another interval session. So you could do that, you could do minute on, minute off type efforts on Friday night, which would give you 2 harder interval sessions, and that will give you some build up in fitness, and it will also create a bit of fatigue for you going into your Saturday ride, so that you get used to riding when your legs are a bit tired. So that's it. You've got your event, you've got a routine, a riding routine. You might need to vary the riding routine a little bit. You might not want to ride 16 hours on, 8 hours off. You might want to do less riding or more riding. Over the time of your training, you can do your practice events, and that'll help you work out what's the best strategy for you, and it's different for everybody. You've got stepping stones along the way to your event, like Odaxes or practice bikepacking trips, or maybe gravel races or whatever, where you can practice all your systems, your fueling system, your hydration system, your kit, and make sure everything works. You've got a weekly routine so that you can be consistent, and you can vary your routine. And if you find things aren't quite working for you, you can make improvements to that week. You've got hard training, which is going to make you faster, and you've got endurance training, which is going to make you able to ride for longer. There you go, all you need to do now is do it. So good luck. If you need any help, get in touch. I'm always happy to help. I can answer informal questions by email. Write a comment below and I'll respond. Have a look at our blog. There's lots of good stuff on there. I'll link some interesting articles below that might be helpful for you. And I'd really love to know how you get on and how you found this video. And if you like these videos, obviously subscribe. Bye. Happy riding. Good luck in your adventures.